and welcome to the podcast series Rooted in Wellness, sponsored by the Effie Barry Training Institute. The Effie Barry Training Institute is funded wholly or in part by the government of the District of Columbia, DC Health, HIV/AIDS, Hepatitis, STD, and TB Administration, or HOSTA. Rooted in Wellness is a podcast miniseries dedicated to exploring holistic approaches to health and well-being. Join us as we delve into topics such as trauma, HIV, mental wellness, and the social determinants of health, all with the goal of helping you cultivate a balanced and thriving life. In today's episode, Real Talk, Dating, Disclosure, and HIV Prevention, we will hear firsthand what it's like to date as a young person living with HIV, breaking stigma, embracing self-worth, and navigating love with courage and honesty. My name is Amy Zamat, and I'm the Senior Capacity Building Assistance Manager here at Health HIV. Today's speakers are Shawnte Spriggs and Eunice Mejadu. Shawnte Spriggs is a proud native of Washington, D.C. She's an active member of the community, serving in various roles for local and national organizations. In December of 2020, on World AIDS Day, she published her first book, Undetected More Than a Status, in which she shares her personal journey of living with HIV. Eunice Mejadu, Esther, is a recent graduate from Howard University. She is a lifelong survivor and advocate for HIV/AIDS prevention and sexual health. After 7 years of working for Advocates for Youth, she hopes to go to law school. Ladies, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So let's start out with, why are we even talking about dating, disclosure in the realm of HIV prevention? Why is that even important?
Well, I will jump right on in. First of all, I probably want to say, like, when is it not important? And that's beyond before my diagnosis. And I say that because simply living as a cisgendered heterosexual woman, it's my whole entire life has been about building relationships, finding that guy that you like, do you go with me? Yes, no. Y'all know how we used to do it. And then taking that to hopefully as you get older to dating and then building a relationship and then hopefully getting to marriage. That has been the goal. But as a person that's been divorced twice, still looking for my third one, y'all. I'm understanding like it's very important because really should that be the goal, considering not just a person that's living with HIV, but beyond a diagnosis, especially when I didn't even think there was a life beyond my diagnosis, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Shawnte. She absolutely agree with that. Um, I think definitely for me, I fit into two buckets. And so like a lifelong survivor, someone who's like born with HIV, or like contracted it at a very young age. And so for me, I'm like from Cameroon, and like being a lifetime survivor in the United States is like very different. They had like whole camps, like it was kind of like they try to make it seem like summer camp. It was like very interesting, like when I hear all of the stories. But I'm also part of the Gen Z generation. Gen Z is so hilarious, but it's also like when I started going to college, it was hot girl summer, like I said, like it was everybody, and it was so fun. It was just, you know everybody wanted to be a stallion. Everybody wanted to ride the horse, but not everybody could take it. And I learned that very, very quickly. That was not my, it was interesting. I did have some fun. And like, I think about it now as I've graduated and like, think about what 19-year-old Eunice was doing. Absolutely crazy. But I definitely think about, all of the things, all of these alpha male cultures, like what it means to be a woman and like dating now where everybody just wants to hook up and stuff like that. And on top of that, I have HIV. And so it's both like a blessing in disguise and at times kind of like I wouldn't say a curse, but something that has forever changed who I am as a person. But yeah.
I love that. Forever changed who you are as a person. I think that's, wow, that speaks volumes. And so I'm going to go in that direction. And so you've both shared this living with HIV and what does that look like? How has that piece, the HIV piece specifically, not the fact that you're a woman, not the fact that you have a specific goal and being relational, but how has the HIV piece affected or interacted with your search for a relationship? How has it played a role?
I can go first.
Oh,
Easy.
Honestly, I guess I'll be a little bit honest here. Like honestly, I'm just in this I'm gonna say whatever kind of period in my life. But one of the things I just want to notice, just like having HIV is very expensive, but like the way in which medication like plays into it, it does kind of like change your body like based on like the medication you might be taking, like an influx in weight, or 1 minute you're feeling snatched because you took this overpriced $5,000 specialty medication created in Gilead, which is weird. And then another moment you can feel like, oh, this is just like crazy. And it's like, it's just one thing after another. And I think I went on a date one time, and I disclosed my status for the first time to this guy I met on Bumble. And so everything was going great until the moment I realized that he and I did not know what HIV was. Like I think about it now, like we were very much giving small town kids who grew up with abstinence only education as our understanding of STIs and sexual health and all of that. And so yeah, so like you have to think about that. It's like I know a lot about HIV and sexual health and all of that because, that's one thing I chose to study that. And then also it affects my life. Other people don't think about that beyond that 10th grade, 11th grade sex ed class.
Yeah, I think Eunice, you bring up a good point. Especially when you look at like the person that you disclose to. I think kind of just going back to Amy's question from my perspective, I've had to see this in different phases. And so dating newly diagnosed looked completely different for me versus um, being more confident in where I am now in dating. Because at the time during my diagnosis, I was married.
Mm,
And so I had to navigate through how does my life even look now? Being on my second marriage, this is supposed to work. It looks great. And then actually post marriage, figuring out dating at that age. And I just like that was just like a unfamiliar nuance. And so, of course, my confidence level wasn't there, but I would have to say, um, integrity wise, I just always just thought, and I know everyone's different. And so I never shoot down anyone for not disclosing. Just for me, I was somewhat always like that figure that everyone was drawn to. I was a popular person. So I kind of felt like it was my duty to disclose and to be that example. And so initially I started disclosing right away.
mhm,
And surprisingly, me disclosing right away, which is like weird when I hear it, is the thing that actually built my confidence to be the person that you see before you. Because the first time that I disclosed to someone, I remember the gentleman said, and I did it in person, he said, okay, well, can we still get together on Friday? And I'm like, well, we eating dinner now, so what does Friday look like? And so when I got that type of response, of course, I was like, okay, I don't know. Maybe that's just a one time thing. I went on and tried it again. It became an experiment. experiment. And so then when I kept trying it, and I would have to say there's probably only been about 2 or 3 individuals from my diagnosis back in 2010 who did not still want to deal with Shawnte um, beyond me actually disclosing. So I would have to say at the initial phase, there was a lot of fear. The confidence is here now because I'm like, hey, you're getting the totality of Shawnte. You're getting the Shawnte that's sure about herself. You're getting the Shawnte that's went through her trauma and dealt with unresolved trauma. But also, I still have to be honest, going back to Eunice's point, and say, if I was to be transparent, no matter how confident I am now, fear still comes up every time, as if it was the first time, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk about fear, of course, there's that natural fear of rejection, but there's so much stigma, unfortunately. I think it's sad that, 30 something years later we're still adding stigma to this conversation, but let's be real, it's still there. So how does stigma show up, or how do the assumptions show up when you're having these conversations? Like, maybe you're not in disclosure, maybe you're talking about disclosing, maybe you're contemplating disclosing, maybe you're in the moment of disclosing on a date, right? How does stigma and assumptions play a role in how you do that, and whether or not you even do that in that relationship, and in what stage you do that? Talk to me about that.
I'll jump in. I would have to say it's not so much particularly isolated with just dating. Because if I went through somewhat of a traumatic event or moment uh, dealing with stigma before I got to a date or before I interacted with an individual, that's going to play a part on me. That's going to affect how I approach that situation. And I think stigma is all the way around, always around us in every level of relationships. There's oftentimes, even with my family, I have to remind, did you just hear what you said? I think one time I was having a conversation with I love her. My mother's the best. But sometimes she just say things and she's like, hey, you gotta be careful who you're out there with, because that's why I just don't just be with anybody, because you don't know what you may get. And I said, well, do you know your daughter has the thing that you're probably talking about? And then it's like, oh no, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean it that way. That's not what I was. But, and I have to express to them, this is what we mean when we say we have to deal with stigma daily. So if I just dealt with that situation and I'm dating someone or considering dating someone and just went through that with my mom or one of my siblings, sometimes it will cause me to somewhat, that's okay. I'm gonna pull back from the situation because I don't want to go through that rejection again or having to explain everything again. And so I think as far as the stigma piece, I think that's something that's always around us. We're always having to find new ways to approach it. It's sad, but it's true. But I do think it plays a part on just where you are at that particular moment and what's taking place. And just really, if that person is going to be receptive to even hearing what you have to say, and then not only being receptive to hearing, are they going to change? Or are we going to revisit this conversation again? And sometimes I feel like it. And to be honest, Eunice and Amy, sometimes I just don't.
I hear that. I hear that. Eunice, I wasn't going to call you out. I promised I wouldn't, but I'm going to have to break that promise because you mentioned an app, meeting somebody on an app. Forgot what you called it.
Bumble.
Oh,
Yes, yes. And the reality is, particularly, it's not exclusive to, but certainly in the younger generation, that's one of the chosen methods for meeting new people. And so, how do the conversations happen? Do they happen? Are they happening? Particularly on HIV prevention, STI prevention, as people are meeting and then potentially dating and or potentially hooking up or engaging in long-term relate, whatever that looks like. How is HIV and the conversations around that fitting into that dynamic?
Um, Simple answer, they are not cute unless you have a friend like me who has 500 condoms that she gives out annually for a program she's a part of. Um, but I think it's very like as I've gotten better at like advocating and like working on campus and stuff like that, like using humor is probably, this generation's way of dealing with anything and everything. But I think something that's really important about Generation Z, and I guess just like younger people, is that we are very much more like, all right, like we're not like we're very much like relaxed. Of course there are, different, this isn't everyone, but it's definitely much more, especially in these like liberal cities, much more like normalized. And I was talking to one of my dear friends who's a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, long name, but love them down. And so we were talking and she was telling me about how just through her process of transitioning and being around queer people and stuff like that, the conversation around HIV is much more rampant than that of like cis relationships, which of course highlights another level of stigma. But usually now after like my experiences, I like I'll just try to get to know a person. And then, of course, if they like get me like dinner, just kind of see how their heads are at because a person, um, can't tell you the difference, who says STDs instead of STIs now. Those are little like things I've like picked up on. I don't like I think when I was younger, when I like first started, I thought, oh, I should tell everyone like my business and be like just open and honest about it. I am open and honest about it. I will never try to hide who I am, but I don't have to like speak out all the time because I know my truth, right? And so it's been very interesting. And so, yeah, definitely for the younger generation, you feel it out most, and some people are like very blunt about it. Some people will put their status on their profile. Me, you have to meet the criterias. I have a very like you have to meet the criterias, and then and then move on. But that's just like because I'm not into just casual sex. That's not who I am.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to flip our perspective because we all identify as female. And so I want to flip the perspective. I too am single, not that we're here to talk about me, but I often think about the prevalence of HIV in men, specifically because I personally am very, very drawn to Black and brown men. I just find them to be beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so the rate of HIV, unfortunately, within our men, particularly our Black and brown men, is much higher than in their white counterparts. And so the reality of being exposed to someone who may or may not choose to disclose is a reality for me in my dating and my perception of dating, right? So, how do we talk to other women about that reality, but still empower them to be strong and confident in their dating? And, like Eunice was saying, to also have that knowledge, to have that understanding, to know, what safety looks like and what behaviors look like and what's gonna uh, be comfortable and help us move forward as a people. What does that look like? How do we have those conversations with other women?
I think for this one, just being an honest level of like transparency. Something I've really been thinking about recently is if you guys have seen the new statue of the Black woman in Times Square. And so I'll try to bring it back together and what my point is. But a lot of after that statue came out was a massive level of discourse and also a massive level of like hatred. And it was coming a lot from like people within the Black community. And so it really got me thinking about when you think about stigma and where it's coming from, specifically, it's from people within your same communities. I described like an instance of discrimination I faced at 16 going to the local Med Express, and the doctor was Southeast Asian, I believe, or something like that. And so his response was not what was expecting. And so it being like a whole level of transparency, because there's a lot of, when we think about HIV and AIDS, when we think about anything like that, it's related to extreme homophobia. It's related to, in my opinion, a corrupted version of Christianity, and it comes back to a community that isn't ready to discuss. No one's saying that HIV is synonymous with, Black people or anything like that. People are just saying that there's a community that's being affected because we're so afraid to talk about sexuality. We're so afraid to talk about what sex looks like and what consent looks like. And so now we have this like whole issue where the default solution is to bash on anything that we deem that is not white, honestly, or is not like is not, you know, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Eunice, you're hitting on so many points, because I do remember like that statue bringing up a lot of conversations. And I think when we look at the conversations, going back to like what you said, Amy, how do we do this with our women? I think it's just one conversation at a time. Um, this we didn't get here overnight, and we can't expect to eradicate the situation or make all Black women or all women or all people that identify as women knowledgeable overnight, because we didn't get here overnight. And so some of the things that I've found that's been successful is, for one, being that pillar or being that person that people can be comfortable enough to come to have those conversations. And so Eunice was talking about having HIV on your profile. I said, Lord, she's talking about me. No, I'm just saying you don't even know me, but I don't really necessarily have it, but I do have HIV advocate, because
Mm,
I found that that will strike the conversation to where some people may ask, so what does that mean to be an HIV advocate? Knowing behind, in the back of their mind, they're like, so I'm like, I put certain breadcrumbs around me, just to kind of lead people to those conversations. Even when I disclose, and Eunice put this up, it's all about humor. I'd never disclose as the woe is me type of individual. I'm like, look, because most times gentlemen are saying, okay, you're so busy because I'm in so many different things. You're doing this, you're doing that. When are you going to slow down? When are you going to let me have time? And I'm just like, look, okay, here we are. So look, what I have, and I always have my labs on my phone, and I have it pulled up. And I said, look, this is the situation right here. What I have is not like bad credit. You can't make a couple of payments, it's going to change. No, it's not going to change. This is it. And then I showed them, they're like, so first of all, they laugh. And then they're like, well, I said, so see where it says undetected? Or I explain it, and then I take them to U equals U. And then I explain that, and I have them read to me the part that says, okay, now what's the percentages here? Okay, now it says what, how much effective, and what's that 1% that's not effective that it may impact as far as you, because they're like, okay, a woman that's pregnant. I'm like, you ain't got to worry about that with me, okay? So it typically starts the conversation, and even with women, it starts the conversation. They may not understand it all the way, but I found it may be months, years later, somebody will say, hey, I saw something about that you equals you stuff you was talking about. Or I was like, oh, I know what that's about. Okay, Shawnte, you mentioned something about PrEP. So what was that you was talking about again? And so I just found that those little small breadcrumbs, one conversation, one opportunity at a time, I've now kind of built this community where people feel comfortable enough. I've had so many people that have yet to disclose to their families, but reached out on social media and stated, this is what's going on with me. I just need to talk to someone. Even people, going back to what Eunice said, in Christianity, in the faith-based community, which is what I came out of, where this is for, we don't talk about this. So many people in that community have reached out to me secretively, and some have gone to their graves and never talked about it or never disclosed. And so I just found, for me, if I'm just that pillar or that place where they can come to, I can give them what they need. And I've seen where they disseminate the information to their children or to their siblings without even disclosing themselves. And so I just think those little small pieces will eventually make a huge impact.
Absolutely. Shawnte, you inspired me. I am putting HIV advocate on my profile and my social media right after this podcast. That is amazing. I love, well, because you're right. I mean, it opens the door to conversation and gives us the opportunity to educate and gives us the opportunity to elevate our sisters and our brothers. I mean, I think that's phenomenal. So I'm totally copying that. So when you inspired me. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned PrEP and U equals U, because I think both of those can be tools in the hands of women living with HIV to really feel empowered to date confidently and to live confidently and to walk confidently and to navigate that confidence as they're navigating HIV. So I love that you mentioned all of that. So when we talk about our social circles, because often when we're dating, we're running, our potentials by our friends and talking to people. What you think about so and so, right? Let's just be real. We don't date in silo. So how? how can friends and your sisters and your family, how can they show up better for people living with HIV, specifically when it comes to dating in social situations? How can people better support you as you are navigating the whole dating scene?
Yes, I'm gonna let you take that one.
No, start off. Let me think about that.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
I think I don't know. Um, I was like, when I was in Europe, I was, of course, talking to my friends at the time about this huge crush I had on one of my fellow classmates that we were in French class with. And he was like, just like, I was just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so I remember he invited me over to his house. That was, anyways. But I was talking to my friends, and they were like, yeah, like you should be fine. And we ended up having this long conversation about dating and like what to expect and like, all of those things. And my one of my friends was like, "Would you like sleep with him and stuff like that?" And I'm like, First of all, no. Um, maybe, but no." And I was like, I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, like, you know, how this person will react, like when they find I have HIV, and also like just based on that reaction. And so and they're like it shouldn't matter and to them it doesn't matter and it shouldn't matter, but it does matter. And I think like being able to like acknowledge that there are people um who have a little disdain for it. And then something else I discovered while I was like in college and trying to date, I was like, maybe I should try dating other young people who have HIV. And there's like this app, and like there are some really weird, no, I stand by it, very weird people who want people with HIV. I feel like it's not as, well documented, within like the cis community or whatever, but it's definitely much more like known within like the LGBTQ community, specifically like those on grinders and things like that, grinder. But and I know this because I was talking to one of my best friends, and it's just like it's like you have a fetishization of that. And it's like, and to my friends, they were like, no, like they're two cis women when I was talking to you at the time. Like, that's not like, that's crazy. Like, and it's an honest conversation to have. And so when you ask like how can friends better show up, it's like also having an awareness of what HIV like kind of looks like. And it's like, um, do you have to go like in your spare time and do a little research? I mean, if you can, but it's not like a like end all be all. But I think like being like, that's real. And like obviously at the end of the day, my friends are always like, if they don't like you for this thing, they're obviously not the person for you. And so definitely having that support system, even when, things hit the fan.
I would agree. I would say one way that like I know my younger sibling, she's more like a daughter to me because we're like 14, yeah, 14 years apart. So 14, 16 years apart. But in the last year or two, and it was a result of my book, because in my book I mentioned how I wish people were more supportive um, in my close circle versus I found love and community and support and family externally, with my chosen family within this community. But I just wish my immediate family didn't see so much the superwoman. They really see the vulnerable woman that's really living with HIV. And so as a result of that, um, slowly but surely, my younger sibling, she will actually reach out and say, hey, I just got my test. And she makes sure she does it like at least once a year. I'm trying to get her to do it more, but I just want her to be willing to do so. But she'll come to me. And even times like we've had other conversations about STIs, just like what to look for or how often should she get tested for that. So I think those are ways that they can kind of show up and be more supportive as well, just to actually not just consider it like othering, like that's a Shawnte issue or a Eunice issue. And because some people can take that approach, like, hey, I don't have it, so that's not me. But no, this could everyone is HIV possible, as one of my sisters says. And so it's like, if you approach it that way, you no longer look at it as this is an isolated situation with just those individuals. This is something that everyone should make sure they're getting tested, or everyone should make sure they're knowledgeable of the different tools that's out there, and you still can live and have a life. And I think that's the part that people think it stops. No, if anything, my life actually picked up speed.
Yes, yes. And I love that you say that because you brought to mind, I have a beautiful friend. She's been living with HIV for a long time now, and she is navigating dating and what that looks like. She's had some good experiences and she's had some very negative experience. She's tried the dating apps and some went well, some not so well. She also, Eunice, she found a few people that were trolling for people living with HIV for whatever reasons. And so one of the things she shared with me, and I've always carried it, and I'm so glad you brought it to my mind, is her statement was, there's times when I wish I could turn off the HIV while I'm dating, because her perspective was that the HIV added such a heavy layer of pieces to the dating dynamic, because dating on its own is tough. You may not get it right the first time, and the person doesn't always present as who they really are in the beginning, and so as the relationship evolves, things come out, and then there's drama. Not that they're all like that, but there's always potential for that, right? And so she was like, and then when you add HIV to that, and disclosure and fear and stigma and potential rejection, to her, it added a lot of extra layers to something that was already complicated. What would you say to individuals like my friend who are navigating that and really are in a moment where they wish they could turn it off? What does that look like? How would you advise her?
I would probably just say, if she wants to, she's in control of her life to a certain degree. Um, when appropriate or applicable, turn it off. We don't have to carry this all day, every day. HIV is not the end all be all to us. Is it a huge part of us? Yeah. I'm not even gonna say huge part no more. It's a part. And I think just like any other parts of us, whether I'm a woman that grew up in DC, whether I was a single mother, whether or not my dad was incarcerated, those are parts of me. That's not the totality of who I am. And so I think where she can, if she wants to cut it off, cut it off. You don't have to carry that every day, or find someone that she can talk to besides you. Seems like she has a good, trust and investment in you, but maybe someone else besides you that can help her navigate that, because it shouldn't be that heavy. Now, there are some situations where we do have to feel it, and dating is one of them, unfortunately. But I like Eunice's approach. Eunice like, no, they gotta burn that. That's a certain criteria. They gotta check the boxes, and
Yeah.
then I'll disclose. So between my approach and Eunice's approach, she gotta find what fits her the best, and commit to that. But if she wants to cut it off, she can, by all means. When she goes into the grocery store, they don't have to know. And the only reason I was so adamant about it, because as a facilitator with a couple of organizations and here and there, when I started realizing that there were laws around disclosing, I travel too much. And I said, I cannot be figuring out what's the law in Pennsylvania, what's the law in New York, what's the law in Florida. Let me just go ahead and just put it out here. And so that's just my truth, why I actually disclose this, because I was like, I can't keep up with it. But unless she faces a situation like that, she doesn't have to carry that. And I think also there's another part of that where those that are supporting her, of course not you, because I know you're very supportive, can help her realize that she doesn't have to carry that. Or we can take some of that burden from her. So maybe it may be getting around another additional community like her, and she can draw strength from us.
Yeah, that was very well said. And honestly, um, now that I think about it, just when I think it's like everybody gets the same speech. Like even if you're like When I found out I had HIV, I was 13, which is a whole other story in and of itself. Whether you find out when you're 13 or, I think now when you find out in this century, they always give you the same speech. You can live a happy and normal life. Medication has advanced to the point, women can we have medication where you can have kids and things like that. And so you get that whole spiel from the doctor telling you like it's gonna be okay. We've come so far. This does not define you. There's plenty of people. And then I think it wasn't until I was probably around like 20 and I was like, for real, like, like this does not and in some ways having HIV, I'm working on this article now, but I've been working on it for a while, where I talk about how HIV kind of saved my life. And I think about it in the way of like the people in your life that are meant to stay will stay. And it's very much like I'm actually thankful that I did have, like because of my HIV, there's plenty of bodies I do not have to this day. Thank you. Thank you that I know I would have regretted. And it comes from a level of like kind of learning to love yourself and what that means. And like from 13 or like 12, whenever I found out to now being at 20, so many things have happened, so many, internalized hatred that left me feeling as if I was dirty, I was unworthy, and it was coming from all sides. And so when I was finally able to become like Jordan Advocates for Youth located here in DC and see this community of other people who have been fighting for HIV and AIDS prevention since before I was born, since before I even, existed on this planet. Um, Realizing that there is this community and realizing that, what is portrayed as this horrible kind of end all be all to life has created some of the strongest people you may ever even meet. And so, if it ever starts to become a burden, then you have to like find a way to unburden yourself. And if that means like just taking a trip or like just doing something for yourself. And like when I went to Europe for the first time and like I was just walking around all of these random people I've never met in my entire life, they didn't care that I had HIV. They just cared that I was walking fast enough so that they could get to their location. We're so caught up in our heads thinking about what other people think about us that we forget like, what do I think about me? And so yeah. So it's to your friend, right now it may seem like a curse, but it's definitely a blessing in disguise because it leads you towards the right people. You're not wasting as much time as like a lot of other people are.
My gosh, the wisdom and confidence on you ladies. Woo!
Oh, that Eunice. Woo!
I don't know who's watching this podcast. I don't know who's listening to this podcast, but if they're not leaving empowered, they missed an episode. They missed something. They need to hit rewind. Oh my gosh. So I need to know, because for real, the confidence just comes out of you, and this I am in control. I've not that I've got it all together, but I'm on the right path, right? I'm strong in this. I need to know, how did you get there? Because so many people living with HIV are not where you are in terms of that confidence, in terms of that I'm in control. I'm in a good place. How did you get to the good place that you're in today?
Ooh,
Uh
go ahead,
yeah,
Eunice. Go ahead, jump on it. Go ahead.
that's real. Like, and check out my book coming out 2028, 2030, or whatever. But I will say this, like I grew up in I guess my father is like the silent generation type in Cameroon, but like don't if we don't speak about my one child out of six having HIV, then it doesn't mean that like then she obviously doesn't have HIV. And that level of like ignorance, and again the question of a corrupted version of Christianity, like me and my father spent a lot of time in DC because that's where one, my primary care doctor is, special immunology. I've been going there since forever, but that's also where I spent a lot of time being hospitalized. And in that time period, and I look back on my life, my father like finally had the like, he apologized, and just the way in which the church had taught us to look at kind of modern medicine, to look at like things like having HIV, it made me believe that I had somehow been punished by God or something. And for a very long time, I thought that this was the punishment, which I thought about it, but there's this one instance where I was so proud to have HIV. And after that moment, I was trying to get my green card, and I share this because I'll put in the story too. But I was, I've been here for X amount of years, and I was trying to get my green card, and I had to, first of all, I'm poor. So like trying to get a green card, and you have a legal aid and kind of things like that. And so I had been running everywhere around town just to make sure I had all of the right paperwork to submit to USCIS. And and it was right here in Columbia Heights. I was asked to come back for whatever reason it was. It was very sketchy. And I got there, and it was only me and that one other person who I had seen at a different Med Express. Guys, I'm telling you. And so it was just me and him, and it was dark. The room was dark. Like it was a full kind of like office room. It was dark. There was nobody in there. And he closed the door. The blinds were down. And he was like, have a seat on my like this black leather chair. And I was sitting there. And I remember I like brought a document, but like it had like I'm HIV positive on there. And he like runs out. He's like, wait, do you have HIV? I said, yes. Yes, I do. Um, and he signed, oh, he was like, alrighty, because he was taking a while. And it was definitely a predatory behavior. And in that moment, like when he said that, like he just kind of looked at me the way that that doctor kind of looked at me, this like confusion, as in like, what is this young Black woman, who I couldn't have been more than like, of course, like 19 at the time or something. And he was like, all right. So he signed the documents, and he was like, we'll send it out. And he let me go. And I think about that experience all the time. And after that, I was very proud to have HIV, because it was because I had HIV, and I will die on that hill. And this person has access to so many immigrants, so many people. Like I just needed that man's signature, that one man's signature, so that I could prove what I already knew, like that I had become so Americanized in my like way of thinking. And so after that, I just stopped caring, because no one, I didn't need anyone to believe me. I didn't like I was just like, this is like, if I didn't have HIV, guys, right now, like you like who knows? And I got my green card, and the world moved on. And you know, I'm absolutely and it takes like, obviously I had a lot of horrible experiences that have gotten me through there, discrimination, da 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 da, da, this, that, and the third. But it's definitely been the people around me, and also from like doing these campaigns of educating, and like doing these programs on campus, and talking to other people, talking to, Black people, love you, Howard, like Black people who really care and who actually are super curious. I've had so many friends ask me like what, like how do you know if the condom fits, or like all of these random. So it's nice having my friends come to me, and they know that I won't ever judge them if they have an STI, or if they have an STD, and they talk to me about all of these things, and I'm always like, this is what you should do, here's the clinic, you can go in for free. And like I'm always like, if you ever need condoms, no glove, no love, like. And so I've just found a lot of empowerment through that, and I'm forever thankful. Like, and that's why I say it's like it's it's a blessing in disguise, but it can, at sometimes it can definitely feel like a burden. Real.
I love that. And I'm gonna go ahead and just bring it all together. I would just say for me, just going along with Eunice, I think I'm confident now. And I say now because I realize that all of this was part of purpose. I'm a very purpose-driven individual, but before I didn't have purpose. And I remember I would attach myself to anyone's purpose. So if you had a purpose, Amy, I'm going to get behind you, and I'm going to drive it, and we're going to take it, we're going to go on tour with it, not realizing that I had my own unique gifts and talents. And I think I did not identify with that until HIV. It made me unique. And I'm going to say, I definitely went through the therapy. I went through the depression for, close to over a year. But when I came out on the other side of it, and it just so happened at the time I was transitioning from North Carolina back to DC. And I remember sitting in my home, I was on an air mattress. And I was like, this thing keeps getting flat in the middle of the night. How did I just leave North Carolina, live on a golf course, and I'm back here on an air mattress? It was so much going through my head. And I said, hold up. You are back in the area where legislation and law and things happen for the country. You're not here just for anything. And I was like, hold up. And I was like, okay, I'm going to find me a conference. And I went literally to Google and I searched HIV conference. And at that time, I found AIDS Watch and by AIDS United, and it was free that year. That's when it was free. And I was like, it's free. Register. And so that was my first thing. And so I found that through purpose, it's like a journey. I would get to one thing. And then as soon as I got there, I remember them asking me my first time, what is your story? Because you have to get broken up into your different areas. And so I went where the people from Maryland was, because I was living in Maryland. And they asked me what was my story. Say it in 2 minutes. They was helping with the elevator pitch, like teaching that. And I said my story. I said, hey, I'm the magic middle. I work in corporate America. I don't necessarily so-called qualify for some of the programs that's out here according to what they see or think they see on my paycheck, but I don't have enough to pay out of pocket. I said, so I'm that magic middle. I can either say, forget my career, forget my dreams, and let me fall below so I can qualify, or I pursue and I still continue to sleep on the air mattress. I'm that magic middle. Immediately, I was given a folder and said, okay, you're going to be talking as one of the spokespersons for Maryland tomorrow. And literally, that's how my whole activism and advocate work changed. Because from there, I saw someone from a nonprofit organization, Heart to Hand. They said, who are you? Okay, you need to come speak to our women. And then it just went on from there to sitting in a support group to now, okay, we need you on the other side of the support group. We need you to facilitate. And what they didn't know was at that time, I had been a business facilitator, executive facilitator for the organization I work for in corporate America for 9 years. Facilitation is easy for me, but I did not know how to bridge the two. How do I have corporate America over here and then have me as a woman living with HIV here and still feel like I'm purposeful? Well, that gave me the opportunity when I started facilitating support groups. And then I started facilitating retreats. And so I noticed throughout, when I look back at it, everything led me to another step, to another step, to another step. And in between, like Una said, well, I went through some stuff in between. I went through some pain, some rejection, understanding me, dealing with unresolved trauma. But I realized after a while, I had enough history to look back at and say, okay, I can see how that led to this, how this led to this, how this led to that. And I realize now, even when things come up, this is out of your control. This is all purposeful. And if you trust the process, where you are right now is going to eventually take you to somewhere else that you would not have even seen yourself in 5 or 10 years from now. And so I'm learning now that this whole HIV thing, it's a part of my process and it's purposeful. And it's been purposeful to other people. And just as much as it's been purposeful and impactful to other people, those people have been purposeful to me. Like you said, I have my community, I have my family, the things I used to long for as a child. I finally have it. My lifestyle has changed. I live the way I want to live. I got a daughter that's getting ready to graduate with her master's. My son is a global musician. I I just turned 51, so I don't know why y'all had me on this talking about young and dating, but I think I'm still young. But all these things I'm studying now for my doctorate. I just got my second master's last May. All of these degrees I got post-diagnosis. I did not have a purpose and I did not see my purpose until HIV. And so that's how I can stand and be confident in this, because I know all along this is a part of the big picture and I now have me. So
ladies, you have been amazing, inspirational, informative. I mean, I promise you, you guys, the listeners, the watchers, I hope that you've taken something, because these women have dropped gold nuggets today. This has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for your contributions, ladies. And to those of you tuning in, thank you for tuning into this episode of our podcast series. I truly hope you found the conversation engaging and informative. Please feel free to listen to any of our previous episodes as well. Episode 1, which is Trauma at the Root of Health Outcome Disparities. Episode number 2 was Roots of Resilience, HIV Prevention and Management and Strategies for Black Women. And of course, episode 3, Roots of Stigma, Cultural Barriers in Mental Health. If you enjoyed today's episode, we invite you to listen to any of our other episodes which focus on the empowerment of Black women concerning effective HIV prevention and management strategies. So remember to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us reach more listeners. Until next time, I'm Amy, and I am so blessed to be among these powerhouse women talking about HIV prevention and dating and living with HIV and how it all blends together so well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So much fun.